or if they're not already. Because then we really will find out whether culture can survive religion or not. And it'll be it already is a very pressing question for our time.
Okay. Thank you for the question, and thank both great answers. By the way, if I may speak as a member of the tribe, one of the cultural, you forgot the two cultural contributions of the Persians, Christopher Hitchens, romance and pistachios as well.
Oh, right. The pistachio industry is now run by Mr. Rafsanjani himself. Private monopoly of one of the clerics.
In the green shirt over there, yes.
Mr. Hitchens, since I have the mic, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I think we all really appreciate it. I'd like to ask, since you have spoken and written in the past about the value of transcendent experience, obviously religion and transcendent experience seems to be tied to a great degree. And I'm wondering, in terms of the cultural impacts of transcendent experience, what do we risk losing, or do we risk losing anything by potentially losing religion? Thank you.
Well done. Good. Okay.
Well, you rather invite, thank you, by the way, for your kind words, you rather invite my answer, I think, here, which is certainly, I would not find trustworthy somebody who professed themselves to be indifferent to the extent of saying that they'd never had a spiritual or an ecstatic moment. I think that people who would be indifferent to the combination of landscape, music, love, possibly the wines of Shiraz, all the things celebrated, in fact, by the great Omar Khayyam, I would find that person to be somewhat null. I would suspect them of an indifference that I wouldn't want to find in a friend or in anyone with intellectual curiosity. But I think there's a huge difference between acknowledging the idea of a cosmos that's larger than we can know or ever will know or can imagine, and the distant refraction of that idea through experiences, whether they're eros or landscape or poetry, the ecstatic. There's all the difference in the world between that and regularly prostrating yourself or sinking to your knees and repeating an incantation in the hope that the more you say it, the more true it's likely to become. That, by contrast, seems to me to be completely banal. Someone just sent me for a review a very interesting book called Confessions of a Buddhist Atheist. Someone who, very serious person who spent a long time as a Buddhist, meditating, practicing, proselytizing. Buddhists in theory don't do that, but they do in fact. Around the world, understands it very well, got a lot out of it, but says, it can only go on contributing now if it gives up a couple of ideas. One of them being the idea of Dharma, the sort of obliteration of the mind, especially of that as being a good idea. And second, the very cruel and fatalistic concept of reincarnation. Again, I think without those two things, it would hardly be recognizable as Buddhism. But clearly there's something worth saving from a cult or a movement, let's not call it a religion if you don't want to, that does believe in meditation, that believes in intense reflection. I think it's quite possible to divorce that from the superstitious, from a belief in the supernatural, and above all from incantation through prayer of the influence of a supreme dictator, of a sort of celestial Kim Jong-il, a dear leader who can't be got rid of.
Thank you, Mr. Hitchens. If I can beg the indulgence of... we are coming to the end of our scheduled time. If it's okay with you two, the debaters, if we take two more questions and then have closing statements, is that okay with you, Mr. Hitchens?
I would honestly rather have more questions.
Okay. Well then, meaning how long can you join us for? It's your call.
I'm actually not in that much of a hurry.
Okay, well, fantastic.
I feel
And Professor Brummett? Well, then we can take more questions. Is there I see a couple of people. I'm just wondering if there's any women who have questions to maintain some sort of gender balance. Yes, over here. And then I'll come up there.
This could be for either of you, but in particular, Mr. Hitchens, I was trying to imagine being in the position of somebody who would argue that religion has been a positive force on our culture. And I was trying to imagine what they might ask you. And what I was thinking was, well, if we don't have something like religion or perhaps a heaven or something like that to believe in or inspire us to do well in this world, maybe to inquire after things, what does do that for us if we don't have religion for you?
Yes, indeed. I mean, just as I think that if you say, as I do, that religion, the morality, ethics, morality, can't be derived from proclamations from on high. You can't get them in 10-tablet form. That belief of mine surely obliges me to say, well then, how do we get them? Because we clearly do have the requirement for an answer to the question, how do we live a just life? What are our responsibilities to others? What would the good life be? And why is it that these questions are important to us? Look, I think the answer is a fairly easy one. I hope not deceptively so. Human solidarity requires it of us. We wouldn't be here having this conversation if we didn't have in our species an innate need to help others, not just for our own sake, though helping others can, of course, lead to benefits for the helper, but because it's positively a pleasurable thing to do. Now, there's no need for any belief in the supernatural, in my opinion, to justify that. It's a sine qua non of being human. Civilizations that don't do this, or species that don't do it or can't do it, simply won't develop. We're only half a chromosome away, but we can still laugh at the chimpanzees because they never got to the stage where they could respect any unit higher than their immediate family, and not even that very well, and that out of a very blunt self-interest. We are able, by using what I won't call altruism, but the need to help, the need to give blood, for example, something I like to do. I can't do it anymore, unfortunately, but I do it for various reasons. One, I have a rare blood group, and one day I might need some myself. In fact, I recently did. Two, I'm not really giving anything away. Someone else is getting a pint, but the pint I give them will be replenished with a nice cup of hot tea in a very short time. And third, because it makes me feel happy. It makes me feel good to do a stranger a favor. That may be simple, but I hope it's not simplistic.
Professor Brummett, did you want to chime in on that? It's a good question.
Yeah, I certainly agree with Mr. Hitchens, but I'm not sure that altruism has given rise to any great art. I can't think of any at the moment, but perhaps I'm wrong. I was thinking about that question in light of the previous question. I was thinking about transcendence, and this, I'm just going to put this out there quickly and then sit down because this may be opening a whole new can of worms, but it seems to me that every age to produce great art, or even great culture, even great everyday culture, has to have some sort of framework that provides that kind of transcendent experience. And that truly great art, truly great culture, even everyday culture, has to come from that. Now, we live in an increasingly secular world, so I think that the problems that Mr. Hitchens complains of, I think, I hope, I believe that they are becoming less and less and less. But the question then becomes, if religion, however you define it, is no longer providing that sort of transcendent motivation or framework, the reason why people make art, the motivation for art, the thing that gives meaning to art and culture, then what does for us? What does provide that kind of transcendence? let me just suggest that I think increasingly it's going to be the market. As global capitalism takes over culture worldwide, like it or not, but I think that may be a new framework, and in 100 years people may be discussing the extremism of capitalism. So I'll just throw that out and then sit down.
That does lead to a whole other series of questions. That's very provocative. Okay, let me try and get somebody up top there. I'm not going to throw the mic up there, but you can just tell me. Yeah, sir, go ahead. Okay. Let me try and do that justice. Mr. Hitchens, by the way, this questioner has traveled 500 miles from Washington, D.C., and so it's a bit of an irony. He mentions Thomas Paine and the notion that nothing could be more divine than the natural sciences. A question to both of you: how has religion, he says, potentially stifled the natural sciences?
Well, everybody knows the story of what happened to people who tried to expand scientific knowledge. The more the sciences shed light, the less room there is for people to say miracles can be prayed for that will achieve the same effect in healthcare, say. Or that bad miracles, bad supernatural, but not supernatural, bad events in the natural order, like hurricanes or earthquakes, are the product of sin. All the things that made religion possible in the years when it was building itself up are kicked away. Now, there is now a whole school of religious types who follow us around, saying, now we've stopped saying that the theory of relativity isn't true. We've stopped saying that the Big Bang would be a heresy. We've stopped saying that all species were created at the same time and for the same reason. Instead, it's just occurred to us, evolution's so intricate, so wonderful, so marvelous, so complex, it could only have been done by God. Well, thanks a lot. This is not really a theory of knowledge, is it? There's no kind of epistemology involved. It's just a catch-up. Contemptible, I think. That's where they have given in. Where they haven't, and a surprisingly large number of places, including in the United States, where they haven't, they still attempt to inhibit the circulation of those discoveries. And I think there's a final closing reason why it unsettles them. There's nothing so much to do with scientific implications. It's this. If you take a look through the Hubble telescope at the photographs it's sending back, for example, or if you read a page of the work of Stephen Hawking, I can only read about one page of him a day and hope to make progress, you'll come across considerations that are so much more awe-inspiring, so much more overwhelming, so much more inclined to induce in you feelings of extreme modesty, awareness of what should be your humility, and so much more grand and wonderful than anything that any religion could possibly come up with. Do you know about the event horizon? Can I just tell you? I mean, I'm sure many people in the audience do. It's the lip of the black hole. If you traveled towards a black hole, you went over its lip, as it were, into it. We have to do this in pictographic terms, of course, because we're so limited in our language. As you went over that, it's called the event horizon, you would, in theory, be able to see the unfolding of the past and the unfolding of the future as well as the present. I say in theory because even if you could get there, you probably wouldn't have time in which to do that. But it's a thought, and actually one of Hawking's colleagues has said to him that if he ever finds out that he's terminally ill, that's the way he wants to die. Now you look at that, the incredible majesty of that thought and that spectacle, and you set it against what? The burning bush? I don't think so. It makes the so-called miraculous supernatural achievements of religion seem what they are, completely trivial. The products of village squabbles in the Bronze Age. So of course there is an enduring incompatibility between those two ways of looking at the world.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Hitchens. Okay, two more, and then we.